Hey gang, welcome back to another video here at Joe Daddy's Garage. In the previous video I had Brooklyn Pony part 40A, so I guess this will be Brooklyn Pony 40B. This video is more about the test fitting of the AOD transmission and the block that I have representing this 347 stroker engine, and the block that I'm using is a 351 Windsor, and I have the transmission bolted to it, and it's in the car behind me up there. So that's the Brooklyn Pony. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and let me show you what's going on. So in the previous video I bolted together the 351 Windsor block and the AOD transmission that you see in the car. And also in that video I just showed how the brackets worked from TCI and how they fit into the TCI suspension system that is also on the car. This transmission is just an empty case. If you haven't seen this before, I'm just giving you some information. And one of the biggest problems I have is this lug right there. So what I plan to do is cut that lug off of the transmission to make clearance, because currently it hits the cross member in the tranny tunnel. So I need to get that off of there. That's going to help set the angle for the transmission. Now another thing I want to go over is the clearance for the oil pan. Now of course this engine does not have an oil pan on it, but what I want to do is get some measurements. Somebody had mentioned that I should pull the oil pan off of the other engine, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to break any seals and separate anything. I want to keep it together. So I'll do some measuring, and I'm pretty comfortable and confident that I'll be able to determine the full fitment of the stroker engine. So if you haven't seen it already, I did a video on unboxing the engine, and you'll see as I do it again, I'm going to take this box off, or the top cover here, and kind of look at the engine one more time. But there is an unboxing video. If you want to see that, go check it out. At this point what I want to do is again pull off the cover and show you that engine. So there it is. I'm not going to take it all the way out of the crate yet. I don't want to do that. But if you haven't seen it before, this is a pretty cool engine. Ford Performance X2 heads on it. Edelbrock intake. Just a really nice engine. Now what I plan to do is do some measuring. So if you notice, and now it's kind of hard to see, I pull the bag up, you can see it's got a rear sump, okay? And so I can do some measuring from where the block is bolted to the crate with a framing square. I'll just come forward and figure out exactly where that location is. This will also give me a location if I want to do some drop measurements from the bottom of the block to that location there, and it'll let me zero in this, location of the rear sump. Now, it also has a front sump. You hard to see through the plastic. There's the front sump, and that's actually where your drain is too. So you can see it kind of tapers on this side and sits low on this side, but I can reach my hands in there, and basically if you see where my fingers are, the depth of my fingers, which is probably 3.5 inches, it starts to curve upward. So I will be able to do some measuring using the block itself and the pan and see what I come up with. So I have a little drawing here. Basically this is the back, that's the front, this is the cutout. I think it's going to fit fine, but it's better to be safe than sorry, so I'm going to do that. Now the other thing I want to show you is the headers, and again this is from TCI supplied this with the kit, and I'm just going to assume that it's that part number at the top there, small block header. goes up at the, I mean at the top. I say this one right here in the middle, because it's got a big block part number, small block, and then LS1, which we're not dealing with. And these are coated headers. Now, that'll have to come later. This kit that they supply is supposed to be for this whole suspension system. It's underneath the car with a small block, so I really have no doubts based on what they've sent that this is going to fit. So that'll come later on, but I know I had some people asking about the headers for the car. Now you know, and if you want to look up the part number on that, you can, and go from there. But those are going to get boxed back up and set aside. Well, I've taken some measurements, and I want to make sure that everything is going to fit just right. So what I've figured out, and just bear with me on this, because I've made a couple of sheets. You see these other ones over here, and if by looking at the measurements, if I go by the back of the block, the pan, the squared off portion that's welded together, is 10 inches from front to the first kick up. At the top of that, it's 5 inches from that radius, let's say, right there to the bottom of the block. This is representing the block, and it's 20 7/8 inches long, minus, or you need to add on, the water pump housing that's going to go all the way at the front. That's what's different about the Ford versus like the Chevy, where the pan just encompasses the entire block, and the Ford has this gap at the front of the block that is filled by that aluminum housing that goes on the front there. Alright, so anyway, the block is 20 7/8, 5 inches here, and then the other measurement I come up with, see if I can, yeah, I forgot to write that one down. Oh, no, I didn't. There it is. From the bottom of the pan to the bottom of the block, the pan has a depth of 8 inches. Okay. From the front, or the rear, let's say, corner of the front sump to the front corner of the rear sump, that is 8 inches. And then the width here is 3.5. Okay, that all makes sense. So what you end up with is the pan basically sticking out a little bit where the engine or this housing would be. Now what I've done is I've measured from the bottom of the block of the 347 here to the bottom of this sump, and that's 6 1/4 inches. The only thing that I needed to figure out was the drop, because I don't have the pump or the housing on the dummy block that I have in the car. I needed to get a depth for how much distance this was going to be. Well, that housing is about 1 3/4 from the front of the block to the flange, or the forward portion of the flange on the oil pan. Now if you deduct the pan, I know this is getting complicated, right? It's about 1 inch back from the front there. Okay, now if I've confused you, I didn't plan to, but I'm going to try to show you some things in comparison with this to the configuration that I have in the car. Now mind you, I do not have that transmission modified, so the engine's sitting at a bit of an angle, and I wanted to show something with the 347 that also may be part of this scenario. So let's take a look. Okay, I want to show you something that relates to this engine and the angles. So if I come to the top of the crate right here, and I use my phone, we all have phones, right? And I set it up on the top of the crate, it's 0 degrees. So it just tells me the crate is sitting, at least this part of the crate is sitting level. Now I know that's not the basis for any kind of measurement, because that crate could be slightly off or whatever. So if I then come down to the engine and I do the same thing, and again, this may just be a pointless reference, but I'm just going to show you. If you can see that, that's -1. So it's off a little bit, and basically the front end is down just a little. If I bring up the front of the phone, it levels out. Now let me show you why I think that's could be significant. Okay, so on the top of the carburetor is this little plastic cover from Holley. And I'm not using it directly as a primary reference, but I'm just going to set it back on because it lines up with the flange where the air cleaner would mount. Now if I take my phone and I set it on top of that, can you see that? I know you can't answer me, but if you can't, it's 4 degrees, -4. So that means the front of the engine is down -4. Now, I know somebody had mentioned that when you put the engine in the car, you want it to be, I think they said 3 degrees of an angle based on the frame being at 0. So if this is level, or within range of being level, 1 degree, and this is at 4, maybe 5, that tells me that that engine is going to have to be sitting kind of like that. To get this carburetor leveled out, there's going to have to be some transition, some change of angle for the main engine. So I'm hoping that that 3 degree, as I mentioned, if the engine's leaning back 3 degrees, that it's going to compensate. And I could be wrong. If you have any more opinion on that or any advice, let me know. But that's what I'm kind of using as a reference. I know somebody had said 3 degrees. Anyway, so let me show you some issues that may be with this pan in relation to the cross member on the car. I'm going to see if I can pull this off. So I said that the distance from the transmission to the well, let's see if I can show you again, from the back of the block to the transition point of the pan is 10 inches. Well, if I come up here and I measure 10 inches, at this point in time it actually overlaps the cross member. I don't know if I can get a good angle or not, but if you can see there, so if I'm at 10 inches, it's about a ½ inch over the cross member. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I also point out, I want to show you, that the cutout, I also want to show you that this cutout that's within the TCI cross member, it measures 9.5. The pan width is 10 inches. I'm not feeling real good about this. Now, let me show you another angle. Alright, so you're looking up from the passenger side. This is the front bearing journal. And if it had the pan on it, the pan would have to come out, the flange of the pan would be way out here. But the actual drop back, when the pan is in place, is going to be a little bit less. And I'm just doing some rough calculations, but essentially, if I use this piece of wood, which is almost 3/4 of an inch, that's roughly where the start of the kickback of the pan would be. Okay. Now, if I measure, as I said before, this distance from the front here is it's 3.5 inches from the very front of the pan that would be exposed. So this would be, if I put this up here to represent the front of the pan, and then I come back, and I know this is really tricky. I'm trying to give you some good measurements, but it's really tough to make this happen real easily. And I'm sorry if this is confusing, but if I were to come back, let's say this represents the front edge of the face of the pan. So if I measure 3.5 back, basically that distance here is where the rear part of the forward sump would be. So in other words, that section that's 3.5 inches is I think it'll clear the rack and pinion. I know that's confusing. I'm really sorry. But anyway, so that would be right about here. And I think it'll clear the rack and pinion setup. My biggest concern is in the back where the pan will not only overlap the cross member back here, back behind here, but also the fitment in this opening. So let's talk about this. Okay. Hopefully you're not confused. But if I could see your faces, you're probably going, what? I'm struggling with the idea of doing what I'm doing. Now the block and the transmission case and all that stuff, that's fitting some of my needs for answers. But ultimately, it's not going to answer the question that I need answered. And that is this pan going to fit? So, guess what? I'm going to pull this engine out of the crate and set it in the Brooklyn Pony. I'm not going to do that today. I do want to mention that I had an email from Peter Davies, I believe it was, in Australia. And he's doing a similar project with a car over there. And he had some issues with the floor pan and the tunnel and different stuff like that. And he mentioned to me that the engine has to go in by itself. I did not think about that. As I was putting in this configuration, I was able to, manipulate it and kind of swoop it down in. But he commented that you have to put the engine in, and then the transmission will have to bolt to it, because the oil pan will not clear the cross member. Not really what I wanted to hear. I'm not surprised though, but I'm just really not excited about that kind of news. So I think to make sure that I'm happy and also that you have information, I'm going to pull that configuration back out of the car and just set it aside. And then I will pull this, like I said, I'll pull this crate engine out of the crate, set it in the car, use the mounts, everything like it should be, and we're going to find out if that oil pan is going to clear that cross member. I'm hoping that it does, but if it doesn't, I'm probably going to have to modify the cross member, because I don't want to take this pan off. I don't think another pan is going to remedy the situation. They built these specifically with these pans. Now there may be another pan that's available that's narrower, I don't know. But if I have to, I'll modify that cross member, widen it out a little bit so it'll clear that pan. But we'll find out next time, because I'm not doing it today. Anyway, I hope you're all okay out there. I know there's a lot going on with the coronavirus. I know it's affecting societies around the globe. And I'm really hoping that all of you are, being careful and washing your hands and taking care of yourselves. It can be pretty scary by the sounds of it, but if we're all proactive, I think it'll help. And, that's all we can do at this point. I know they're working on trying to get a vaccine and different stuff like that. But anyway, at this point, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for subscribing. Leave a comment. It could be good or bad, because I know I'm really terrible at doing the measuring thing to try to resolve some issues. But I still appreciate you being here and watching. And there will be another one. We'll probably do it next week and see if I can't get this in place. So until next time, take care of yourselves. Hey gang. Clapping my hands. No. So in the before the Brooklyn Pony or into the blah. So in the previous video, I assembled can I say it right? Stop it.